And look, we could be living in a world where we're still using CompuServe or AOL and everything is in a little tight silo. The internet came along and said, there's a way to do this on one big network, still privately, still securely. And blockchain is the same thing to title registries as the internet was to electronic communication.
Hello everyone, I'm Jere, co-founder and COO at Olyn. We have Greg Kidd here, our investor, our advisor, our friend. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
You need an introduction, a bit of a heads up. I must say you are one of a kind in that sense. The other day we were spending time in team building, right? And you were sharing some stories. And I thought the world needs to know. So why not bring that conversation, part of that, to life today? So here we are at our offices.
On a Sunday, thank you for having me.
Looking at your portfolio, yeah, you guys at Yaka, Coinbase, Solana, right, Twitter, Square, one gets to see that you invest towards a vision, right? Less about the economics of the company. Tell us more about that. What are your bets? How is Yaka different from any other VC out there?
Right, so Hard Yaka, it's working on, sometimes we call it the Star Trek future, like when we figure out how all the things in Star Trek work. And one of the things we want to have in that future is a world where people are in charge of their bundle of sticks. And those bundle of sticks might be their messages, their money, and also how do we make that so that's for everyone, not just Americans and Europeans, but everyone everywhere around the world. And so the thesis for Hard Yaka is self-sovereignty and inclusion, and it's really about that bundle of sticks we just covered. So we're a goal-driven organization with a mission for those things to happen in our lifetime, to make the Star Trek future pulled forward.
Star Trek, to boldly go where no one has gone before. Well, then Yaka's portfolio speaks for itself. At Olyn, we believe that ownership matters, right? Today, people have title over certain assets, like a car, like a house. But we believe, we see a future where everything will be owned, right? Physical assets, digital assets, data, identity, you name it. And for that, blockchain plays a big role, right? And somehow today in the market, some investors have certain retentions when it comes to these buzzwords like NFTs, blockchain. So what got you excited about Olyn's approach? I mean, beyond the hype and all those buzzwords.
So we came and got excited about Olyn because Olyn has a vision for increasing that bundle of sticks to include, as you said, all the physical assets, virtual assets, into what I might call the registry of everything. Up till now, there's a registry for diamonds, there's a registry for cars, there's all these siloed registries, and each of them, you have to ask the question of who signs that registry. Is it the same Greg Kidd in the diamond registry as in the car registry? And now, in today's world with blockchain, there's the concept that there might be a technology, a registry for everything. And the key thing is it's one identity that's signing all those transactions, whether it's a car or a piece of art, whatever type of asset, anything on this universal registry as opposed to trapping it all in silos. And so we see Olyn as our pioneering firm for figuring out how to do that, both for end individuals, but also for merchants. So at the time when something is purchased, that's a point potentially of injecting information the merchant or the manufacturer or the creator behind the product and service has with information about the purchaser. And putting that all together, there's this magical thing called a receipt. And that seems like a really great time to put all the pieces together, make it immutable, put it on the blockchain, hopefully in a privacy preserving and secure way, and we're off to the races.
True. Our view today, again, receipts do not represent your bundle of sticks. As a startup, as we are having these discussions, these conversations with investors, we got off this feedback, we don't do crypto. So for those who are watching this and still are confused about blockchain versus crypto, what can we tell them?
Well, again, there's crypto and then there's the blockchain. And you might just think of as crypto as a way of paying for things to happen on the blockchain. We have other databases out there like the card processing network, banking databases and whatnot. They just call it interchange. They have a form of money, usually in fiat money, for paying for all those servers and processes. And so in blockchain, you could pay with crypto. You could hide the crypto away and make it all happen in fiat currency, but the easiest way to do it was crypto. But putting all that aside, what this is really about is title registries. Everybody knows title registries. They go back in time like forever. It's just a better title registry. Why is it better? It's because it's more universal. And look, we could be living in a world where we're still using CompuServe or AOL and everything is in a little tight silo. The internet came along and said, there's a way to do this on one big network, still privately, still securely. And blockchain is the same thing to title registries as the internet was to electronic communication. It's a universal standard. And so if Olyn's going to build a universal bundle of sticks, why wouldn't you build it on a technology that can touch everything and everyone, as opposed to something that operates in a bunch of little silos? Because it's really hard to put things back together after the fact, of trying to assemble and get like the diamond registry to know it's the same person as the car registry, as the house registry, as the registry that maybe you got like for keeping track of Picasso arts of work. Really, really hard after the fact. So if you start with a common technology that already is universal, you don't have to solve that putting Humpty Dumpty back together again problem. And so Olyn's in that space. And so what investors should focus on is not the underlying technology, but really just the scope and the reach of what this new technology can reach and do. And so whether you were doing that on pen and paper, or quote unquote a blockchain, the point is that it's a universal reach and a universal standard that everybody can use.
Speaking of universal, we got two out there that have two different views when it comes to blockchain. Jack Dorsey versus Andreessen.
So I'm guilty as charged in that debate. So, Jack Dorsey has come and said, Bitcoin is the pure, decentralized, it's the first, it's really the true innovation. And that is true. Bitcoin is like the most decentralized. It was the first. But Andreessen, in our view, is also true. Bitcoin was great, but you can't do everything on Bitcoin. Bitcoin doesn't support, for instance, smart contracts. It's not super fast. And so innovation and R&D didn't start with Bitcoin. You should still bow down and praise and recognize that was the big innovation. That was the shoulders, and a lot of these other things are built on top of that concept of a permissionless access to a technology. So I think Jack's criticism is that the people that are doing Web 3.0 are a lot the same as the people that are doing Web 2.0. It's not as creative or as much of an innovation. And that is true, and I am guilty as charged. I loved Bitcoin, but there's things I want to do that are either cheaper or more complicated than Bitcoin can handle. And even like Jack, he supports Lightning, which is a layer 2 protocol built on top of Bitcoin, and we're investors there too. But at the end of the day, look, it is the same people that are enthusiastic about these new layer 1 and layer 2 protocols that were originally enthusiastic about Bitcoin. Jack's just more of a purist than the rest of us, and I applaud him for that. But at the end of the day, do you believe in technology or not? And there's room, I think, for the purists and the non-purists.
Well, I can sense that you sit somewhere in between. Moving a little back in time, let's talk about those people who have been shaking the status quo of things. I'm not sure if many know, but apart from all these things we've talked so far, you are one of the guys behind the film, The Internet's Homeboy, right? Aaron Swartz, the co-founder of Reddit, internet activist, among other many things, standing for the internet freedom, for civil rights, making information and knowledge as available as possible, right? What was the risk in there? At what cost? Are regulators ever going to come to the senses when it comes to innovation? What is the role that digitization should have in our lives?
Well, we've talked about this concept of the bundle of sticks, and these are all the things that you control. You. But the other side of that, that's just one side of the coin. It's what are all the things that are in the public domain? What are the things that like make life better for the public and are also to you a private benefit? Like you can have a public park that everyone can enjoy and it can personally give you joy. But it's not because it's your bundle of sticks, it's because society created a bunch of value out there that is in the public domain. And Aaron Swartz was a big believer of this. He believed that many things like scientific research should be available not just to people that are going to elite universities, but anybody who wants to read that. Or the results of public court records ought to be there. And so he built technologies to make sure that things that were meant to be in the public domain could, from a practical sense, through the internet, get to the public domain. Now there was a debate. Some of those people might say, well, those things were meant for the public domain, but they're sitting on our servers, and the way you use them, we want to control. And so you may think that like an ad for a toaster on Craigslist sits in the public domain because anybody can go to that website and view it, but we're going to control your access. Even though you might say, look, it's in the newspaper or it's a billboard on the street, can I like write down the price on the billboard because it's in a public space? Aaron Swartz fought for those principles and was sued and was ultimately depressed about maybe other things, but that enough such that he committed suicide. And so we lost a great pioneer. I didn't know him beforehand. I wish I did. And so I've spent years since sort of fighting for causes that he fought for. And yeah, I did make a contribution to the documentary so people don't forget the example of Aaron Swartz, and they don't forget the concept that in addition to this private bundle of sticks that we want to control, that our lives can also be enriched by a very vibrant public domain. And he fought the forces that try to privatize the public domain. Just like Twitter fights the concept of people putting out patents to basically thwart innovation, Twitter will oftentimes take a technology that they come up with, like an OAuth 2 or something. They'll patent it and then put the patent in the public domain to make sure that others don't take a new technology and basically put it behind a wall and charge exploitive or extractive economic rents for it. So, there is this fine balance between like what is private versus what is public. But to us, once it's public, it really should be public and not co-opted by a particular government or corporation or even some individual that's trying to essentially expropriate public land or public value and put it falsely into their bundle of sticks.
Right. What role does risk play when it comes to innovation?
Right. So some people would interpret risk as like, what's the statistical probability of a good versus a bad outcome? But there's another kind of risk, like if you're cooking and you want to make sure that the pan is hot, you can tap it and it's hot. Okay, so that's not like a success or failure. Risk is like a form of learning to find out and run a bunch of experiments. And so an experiment is a failure not if the outcome didn't come out a certain way. It's a failure if you didn't learn something when it did fail, right? So to us, when you have things that might return 100 to 1 or 1,000 to 1, as long as many of the things that are failing are things that actually teach you something, then those failures are part of your learning process. And so if you think of risk and failures as a form of learning, as opposed to a series of failures, then you have a very different attitude about risk. And it's the Michael Jordan thing that says, I succeed because I fail over and over and over again. So his failures are part of his learning process to eventually have successes. And so the question is, do you run out of money and time before you learn the thing that you really need to do to basically see the change in the world that you want to see? And that's why you have young people and kids, right? Because you might run out of time or get hit by a bus, but in the meantime, that doesn't mean you don't want to like get up and go for a ride and meet the world every day. And so, you know, the energy is pretty good if you think that the direction of the problem you're working on is good. And you don't like get depressed if you're not going to solve it because the next generation behind you, you know, that's why we need the Olyns of the world, right? Like they're going to solve it. It doesn't have to be all on my shoulders. I just need to find the right people to go on a bike ride with or have lunch with, right?
Totally.
And make sure there's milk in the fridge, right? but that is, we call that the Forrest Gump investment style, just being at the right place with the right people. But that really is kind of how like a lot of creativity and innovation in the world, whether it's in science or art, seems to work with me. It's like, you know, who you hang around with, and those are the people that individually but also collectively are changing things from the way they were to the way they're going to be. I saw that at the Picasso Museum here yesterday. I went and I saw the early Picasso works. I never would have thought he looked like an Impressionist painting, and who would have ever thunk that out of that came the Picasso of later years. Clearly, maybe that all came from one person within. I'm sure it had something to do also with the circles of people and the events. These things don't happen in a vacuum. And so that willingness to have like a high rate of mistakes and treat them as learning is really the capstone to like the risk strategy. And we have this thing is like the biggest risk is that you don't take a risk at all. And that's the boiling frog phenomena. You just keep avoiding risk, and that cumulative avoidance leads to the really transformational failure that ultimately defines you, because it's like you're waiting for Godot, you're waiting for God, and you know, maybe that's not the way you find God, is by waiting around. And so risk here for us, same thing. Take it, have failures, adjust, come back the next day.
Before wrapping up here, the $1 million question. When will you ever run for president for the United States of America?
Well, that is not my ambition or goal. You know, if you watch Star Trek, there's Kirk, but there's also Spock, and there's Scotty. So there's a lot of roles to be played. And so, you know, my job is, as I see it, is to sharpen the stick and poke the bear. The question is, do you poke the bear in the butt or do you poke him in the eye? Like, how much change can our society, the powers that be, absorb without having a reaction and actually setting us back? So I am more interested in being the guy that finds like the next Jack Dorsey or Anna or, you know, whoever it's going to be, than being that person, because I just feel more comfortable. And I'm not the deepest thinker, you know, but I'm sort of more of a, like a, you know, that guy's or that gal, that's pretty good. I'd like to like get behind them. So in cycling, we call it a domestique. I'd like to be a super domestique, but I'm not necessarily looking to be the team leader. So president, not a good role, but there's some other things that, you know, I'm heading to Washington, D.C. from here to kind of try to influence some of those regulators and policymakers. But I'd like to be like one step removed. They look better on camera and, you know, than I do. So I'll be looking for roles, not leadership in that regard.
It's been an absolute honor having you here, listen to your thoughts, your vision. Thank you very much.